Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, and we have got a lot going on in the Big Ten. We just saw one of the biggest upsets in Big Ten basketball happening this year. Wisconsin goes down to Michigan. Juwan Howard coached his butt off. Doug McDaniel played his butt off, whatever you want to call it. Wisconsin just didn't play their best game at the end of the day. We're going to jump into it here in just a minute, but before we do that, I do want to let you know we have Brant from Big Banter Sports, CEO, with us. We have Evan, new member of Big Banter Sports with the Boiler Breakdown, and then Joe Jackson from Feed the Post, a YouTube channel that I love to watch. He does a great job breaking down film, plays, and for people like me that I'm still learning basketball a little bit, I'm not the best with it, but I get by. Obviously, I'm on a podcast, so I do okay for myself, but I learn stuff from Joe all the time. It's a great time. Brant, how you doing tonight?
I was doing well until I saw Michigan pull off a win. With the losing streak that Ohio State's on, that made me feel a little better that Michigan was dealing with the same kind of issues. But to see them kind of right the ship against one of the top teams in the conference, good for them. But it always seems like when I hop on one of these shows, something devastating happens with either Ohio State losing or Michigan winning. And here we are.
That's like Shaps. Illinois lost that one night, and he literally was telling me, he was like, "Well, yeah, I'll come on the show as long as it doesn't jinx it." No, it jinxed it. How it goes sometimes. Evan, how are you doing tonight, man?
Doing very well. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, of course. Joe, how are you doing?
Doing good. Excited to talk some Big Ten hoops.
Oh, yeah. We're going to have a great time. Do we want to remind you before we get into it, please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. If you're listening on podcast later after the fact, go ahead and subscribe. Give us a rating or review over there. And we do want to remind you the Big Ten Huddle is brought to you by Big Banter Sports, bigbantersports.com for all your Big Ten media needs. All right, guys, let's talk about it. Wisconsin goes to Ann Arbor, and Michigan, they were up at halftime. The announcers, they were not going to let anybody with ears not know that Michigan has blown halftime lead. I think they mentioned it like 10 times. I was like, guys, we get it. It's okay. But in the second half, Michigan kept playing well. Wisconsin, they were missing some threes, but they were making some to keep it close there at the end of the game. It was just kind of a back and forth game, but Michigan kept pulling ahead, and Wisconsin never really seemed to get back there. That's 3 straight losses for Wisconsin. 3 straight, starting with Nebraska last week, Purdue this weekend, and then, of course, the Wolverines tonight. Joe, what were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, this is, like you said, huge for Michigan being able to actually hold a second half lead and get the win. And it wasn't even like, Wisconsin definitely cut it close in that second half and made things, made it a game. But it wasn't like Michigan ever was like really out of it. It was pretty back and forth, and Michigan's able to make plays. I think, the more interesting part will be Wisconsin, just because, although, yes, great win for Michigan. As you can kind of look at the bottom of the screen here, Michigan's 8-15 and 3-9 in the Big Ten. Good win for them, and there's some Juwan Howard talk, I'm sure, with that. But Wisconsin is the one that it matters more, and I think this is kind of the game where it shows, like, one, just how important AJ Storr is. He started off really well, and had some moments in the second half, but I think that period late in the first half, he was really quiet. And Wisconsin's offense really seems like it's starting to go where he goes. Chucky Hepburn, great game, which they absolutely needed. But, Robbie Hummel on the call mentioned it quite a few times. In that second half, when Wisconsin wanted to get to the rim and they got there, it was a bucket. If they didn't get to the rim, they just weren't able to hit everything. 5 for 19 from 3 after struggling shooting from 3 against Purdue the other day. There's just some – I think it's just kind of how Wisconsin is. How they're much better at getting to the rim this year, and they showed that at some in the second half. But at the end of the day, to me, they're still pretty reliant on the jumper in general, and they have dudes that can hit them. But when it's not falling, then what? And Michigan was able to take advantage. You have Doug McDaniel make enough plays, just really across the board. You look across 4 people in double figures, just a lot of good effort from everybody, I thought, which is not what you've seen from Michigan lately. So that was pretty good to see from them.
Yeah, no, for sure. You definitely saw Michigan playing their hearts out in this one, and that's what you've not seen from some of these other teams who have given up second half leads, and just seemed like Michigan. I don't know what Juwan Howard said. I don't know if he, took their oatmeal cream pies from them or what he did, and said, no treats for you unless you guys win this one. I have no idea, but whatever he did in the locker room, he was able to get those guys to go out there and play with their hair on fire and give great effort. Evan, what were your thoughts on the game?
I mean, something what Joe was saying. I feel like this Wisconsin team, I feel like they're almost unlike other Wisconsin teams we've seen in the past, where I feel like usually Wisconsin, they're good at, what they're good at. They just, beat to death, whether it's going to the post or whatever it may be. And it may not be the most, fun basketball to watch, but they're good at it and it works really well. And I'm just really surprised going back to the Purdue game over the weekend and even tonight, going to the post worked for them so well. I was just really surprised to see them kind of go away from that as much when they kind of got back into the game or even maybe took the lead and then started relying on those jumpers again. Just kind of really, it was surprising to me because I just felt like, it was working. Why are you going away from it? And then no surprise, Purdue was able to pull away from it on Sunday, and then Michigan was able to pull it away here tonight.
Yeah, Brent, you mentioned it, man. You're kind of heartbroken a little bit seeing Michigan win, but they did win. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, for me, I mean, the Badgers are in a lull. You mentioned it. They've now dropped 3 in a row. The first 2 were excusable, but this one is where you start to hit the panic button. I mean, I say it all the time on this show. No road game is free in the Big Ten, even against the worst team in the Big Ten. But when you're one of those top 4 teams in that top tier, and you're on the road against the worst team in the conference, hands down, you can't lose that game. So I think it's time to hit the panic button for the Badgers. I also do think that talent-wise, Wisconsin's kind of been playing a bit above where they kind of stand talent-wise. They've been winning a lot of games, a lot of close games. And I think a lot of that goes to kind of the stability they have year over year on their team. And obviously they added AJ Soar in the offseason. But these guys have played a lot of basketball together for the most part. And, having that kind of cohesiveness on a team, it's just better when it comes down to those close games. You can trust your guys. You're out there riding for your guys. And it's worked out for them to this point. But they're just kind of coming crashing down to reality that this isn't a top 6 team in the nation like they were ranked last week. Is it a top 25 team? Probably, but yeah, I mean, this game's also probably what they needed to, just a bit of a wake up call. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they proceed from here.
Yeah, and you look at their schedule, like their next game is at Rutgers, and we'll talk about, I know, Rutgers in a little bit. Rutgers has won 2 in a row. They seem to have some life in their program. The RAC is a tough place to play, one of the tougher places in the Big Ten. You have Wisconsin's ranked 11, I think, right now or whatever in the AP poll. That place is going to be rocking, and so it goes from like Wisconsin should win this game at Rutgers, or they probably would need it, to like they absolutely need it. You can't drop 4 in a row. You mentioned it, Brant. Like at Nebraska, obviously they're up 18, and you don't want to, or whatever it was, and you don't want to lose that. But at Nebraska, whatever, not the worst loss. Home against Purdue, you lost to the best team in the country, or the second best team in the country, whatever. You can't lose to at Michigan and at Rutgers in the same week this year. That cannot happen.
Yeah, no, exactly. I will say on the bright side, if they do lose 4 in a row to at Rutgers, the game after that, they play Ohio State. And that's a win for everybody. Everybody wins that game. So
True.
They're not going to lose 5 in a row. That's the good news there. Now, guys, I got to be honest. We have 2 Boilermakers here on the podcast, and nobody even mentioned the stat above all stats that is the greatest indicator of an unfairly refereed game and is the main indicator of why a team wins. Okay? Guess how many free throws Wisconsin had?
In this game?
Yes.
12.
19. Guess
19.
how many free throws Michigan had? I'll give you a hint. It's more than 19.
26.
25. You were very close. Good job. That's what it is, guys. That's what it is. Michigan shot more free throws. Obviously, they had the refs in their back pocket. So that's right, Brant. Am I right? I mean,
yeah, I mean that's what I'm seeing all over the place. You hack Edey so many times, he gets to the free throw line more than anybody else, and bang, and that's how they win games.
Yeah,
that's how they do it.
Yep,
that is how you do it. Now, and on a more serious note, I will say for me, I felt like the biggest thing in this game was Terrace Reed just absolutely demoralizing Stephen Crowell on the block every single time. I mean, there were times when Crowell was trying to back him down, and literally like Reed was backing him up from the basket. I think there was like one of those last positions they had, Crowell was trying to back read down, and eventually Crowell just like gave up and was like, I'm just going to throw this up here. It was one of the ugliest shots there was all game, and that's specifically because Terrace Reed was able to just essentially bully Stephen Crowell and get him away from the basket. And if that continues, I got to be honest, this Rutgers game, like you guys were talking about, it does not bode well for them because Cliff Amorier is going to be able to do that, and Rutgers is going to play tough, mean basketball. It's going to do that to them. We mentioned the panic button a little bit, but Evan, I'm curious your thoughts. Is it time for the Badgers to kind of hit the panic button a little bit?
I think it really kind of bodes on the Rutgers game. I mean, obviously, if you lose, 4 or 5 in a row, then yeah, 100%. I think this is where, again, like kind of we talked about already, like the first 2 games, you can understand me why they lost. At Nebraska is a great environment, especially when a top team comes to town, especially when they can get rolling there. Again, Purdue, like Joe said, one of the best teams in the country. No shame in losing by single digits on your home court. This one's you chalk it to a bit of a head scratcher. Maybe they're coming off. It was a physical game on Sunday. Maybe there's a little bit of a hangover, whatever it may be, whatever you want to say. But if they come out and lay an egg against Rutgers, then yeah, it is absolutely time to mash that panic button.
Yeah, for sure. And the other piece of it too is like you have to get more out of your bench. Chucky Hepburn did what he did in this game: 17 points, 2 rebounds, only 1 assist. You'd like to see more assists from Chucky in this game, but that was a complaint that I heard from Wisconsin fans after the Purdue game was, we need Chucky to shoot better. We need Chucky to shoot more. Well, he took 11 shots in this game, made 6 of them, took 3 threes and made 2 of them. But at the end of the day, he only had 1 assist. And one of the biggest reasons for that is because they only had 6 points off the bench. When you had 68 points and only 6 of them come off the bench, Blackwell with only 3, that's not going to get it done. Brant, was there another area, whether it be the bench or down low or anything like that Wisconsin needs to look for in their next game against Rutgers to really fix?
Yeah, I thought your point about Chucky was great. I do think that getting him involved in the offense, rather than just passing, actually getting some scoring, would have helped out. But as you saw here, it really did not flip the script for him. They still lost the game. I think if Connor Essegian could get going, and we've been saying that all year, he could be an X factor for this team. What they really need help with is scoring on the outside. But he hasn't been the same player he was last year.
No, he hasn't, and some of it's been role change, and I like kind of the player that he's been more this year, but, that's with the other players on his team filling their roles and doing what they need to do. One last question for you, Joe, and then we'll move on from here. This Michigan team obviously was on a terrible losing streak. I think they were like 1 for their last 12 or something like that. And they just were having a really hard time this season. Doug McDaniel is back. I felt like Jalen Llewellyn played a really good game. He got 20 minutes, and even Doug and Jalen Llewellyn were out there together a little bit. Not a lot, but there was a little bit of that. Do you have any hopes? Obviously, Michigan's not going to make the NCAA tournament or anything like that, but do you have any hopes for Michigan to continue on with this season and improve the season a little bit more?
The tough thing is, like, even if they play pretty well, which I think they have it in them. We'll see if this was just kind of their like one final hurrah and everything was able to click. But you look at their schedule and their next 5 games: at Nebraska, at Illinois, home against Michigan State, at Northwestern, home against Purdue. Not the easiest schedule to get right. So, even when you include this Wisconsin, they literally play the pretty much consensus top 6 teams in the Big Ten all in a row. If they're able to like stay competitive against Nebraska, maybe even pull off a win, I think that would be like really good signs. And as you guys are Ohio State fans, if you want to keep Juwan Howard, that would be a very good win then. Yeah. But that's a tough schedule for them to try to keep up with that. So we'll see what happens. I do have one real quick. I didn't quite get this in with the Wisconsin is from @Cobra Stats on Twitter. He's a Purdue stats guy, but does some Big Ten stuff as well. Really just good follow in general. Purdue are teams that play Purdue, like their next game or the game after they play Purdue in the Big Ten, teams are now 2-8 on the season.
Wow.
And that's been pretty consistent the last 2 years, even too. It was kind of a theme. I know, especially 2 years ago with Jaden Ivey. Purdue lost at IU, and then the next game IU got blown out at home by Michigan. It was a pretty consistent theme the last couple of years. It's been pretty weird.
We should take a look at the free throws. See if that keeps up. You know,
There it
might
is.
be onto something there. Tell Cobra look at the free throws next time as well. That could give us some direction there. Do have a comment from Dylan. Dylan, a loaded boiler huddle. You love to see it. And JR, handsome as always. Hey, I didn't wear the hat tonight just for you, Dylan. I was hoping you would notice. So appreciate you being here and watching, man. All right, let's get to our next one. We have Michigan State went to Minneapolis at Minnesota, and they lost. This was a game that, Michigan kind of needed a good road win for them. Minnesota is a good team. I don't think they're recognized as a great team. I don't even think their own fans would recognize them as a great team, but they're obviously much improved this year, and it would have been respectable for Michigan State to go in there and get the win. However, it just wasn't a great game for Michigan State, and Minnesota was able to take care of business in this one. Evan, I'm curious, what were your thoughts on the Michigan State and Minnesota game?
Yeah, this was a big week for Michigan State. You're coming into it because you had obviously the game at Minnesota, which going into it, I thought they were going to take care of business, really not have too much trouble with them. Like you said, Minnesota is much improved compared to last year, but they were pretty awful last year, so it doesn't take much to be improved. But you got this game, then you have Illinois coming to East Lansing on Saturday, so you really had Michigan State had a really good opportunity to kind of get two really big wins to kind of maybe cement themselves as a top 4 team in the Big Ten. And they're off to a really bad start. Obviously, give credit to Minnesota, taking care of business at home. Guys like, Christie, stepping up. He's been a pretty awesome freshman all year. Could definitely have the argument, is he better than his brother was at Michigan State a couple years ago? But yeah, definitely impressive win for Minnesota. And yeah, it's an interesting season for Michigan State. Obviously, they came into the year as, picked to win the Big Ten, or if not second, finish maybe second to Purdue, and things have not gone well for them in comparison.
Yeah, I mean, Tyson Walker has been everything that you would want, but
been their only thing sometimes, yeah.
Right, like that's the only thing though that they wanted. They've had some other guys show up. Hall, Malik Hall has been okay from time to time, and Akins has been fine from time to time. But it's the issue of the inconsistency and them not really showing up. It's funny because at the beginning of the year, I said Illinois needs to be more consistent, and it's kind of like flip-flopped with Michigan State is now that kind of inconsistent team that's not really able to do what they need to do. And Illinois, while they're struggling by their standards right now, they are not really so much the same way. Now, we'll see what happens with them in Northwestern tonight, so I might eat those words, but it's going to be interesting for sure. And I think you're right, Evan. Cam Christie, very underrated freshman in the Big Ten this year. He's one that does not get enough credit, I think, for how good he's been, and he's really he's changed this Gophers program in a good way. Brant, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Michigan State just doesn't really have a dog mentality, in my opinion. And it comes down to, Tyson Walker, I think, does. He can hit big shots. But when it comes down to all the supporting cast, like you said, you just don't have guys who it really seems like are giving their all and can do things that make it a winning program. AJ Hoggeter is a guy who comes to mind that just isn't playing up to preseason expectations. And he was a guy, as a senior point guard that you really expected to have this team. They were top 5 preseason for a reason. And he was one of those pieces that you really expected to have a good season. Back to Cam Christie, though, I'm going to put my foot down on the fact that he should be the Big Ten freshman of the year. And I don't Indiana fans will tell you it should be McKenzie. I think they're wrong. I think Cam Christie has done a lot more for Minnesota than McKenzie Mbako has done for Indiana. That'll be interesting to see, how that race kind of unfolds down the stretch. But the things he's done for Minnesota have really been insane. Like, you see Minnesota there with 6 conference wins this year. I expected them to have half of that for the entire year. This team was horrendous last year, and it didn't seem like that they did a lot during the offseason to change that. But I underestimated Ben Johnson. He's come out, and his guys play hard every single game. They may not be the most talented team in the conference, but you're going to get a hard-fought game from them. And that's a lot more than you can say for some of these Big Ten teams.
Yeah, if the Big Ten tournament started today, they get the double bye as the 4th seed.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
Yeah. Insane.
which is a credit to what Ben Johnson's done. I questioned some of the offseason moves. I didn't know if I trusted Elijah Hawkins making the jump from Howard. He was at Howard last year, make the jump to a Big Ten team. He's been good. He's limited the turnovers in terms of like where he was at last year, where it was almost just like a 1-to-1 type thing at times where, yes, he might have 8 assists, but it was also 7 turnovers in the process. He didn't have like his best game yesterday, but still 6 assists. He's somebody that, when Minnesota needs something to be created, they can at least just throw it to him and run a pick and roll, and he'll be able to find a dude. Now you do surround him with shooters in Christie, in Mitchell, especially Christie, who's just been phenomenal for a large chunk of the season. Dawson Garcia is playing as a top 10-ish player in the conference, at least all Big Ten level for sure. And then Pharrell Payne has his moment. He's kind of like Payne's like Terrace Reed to me, where it's just you have some of these flashes and you're just like, man, he could be so good. Isn't there every game, but when the flashes are there, it's like, man, the dude's talented. Just 6'9", moves insanely well. And then even you get good energy off the bench now from Parker Fox, and they're not. I don't think Minnesota's a deep team at all. I think they're they trust 6 to 8 guys on any given night, but Parker Fox has been one of them, and good energy, is able to score. And it just seems like last year when I was kind of recapping the season and I was thinking of Minnesota, I was like, what was their identity? Like they just didn't have one. I don't think they knew who they were. Ben Johnson didn't quite know what he wanted to do. They have more of an identity this year, I think, especially offensively, of running more pick and rolls. You have your shooters, and then if you need to, you just have Garcia try and go get you a bucket, and he can do it in a variety of ways. So just more of a true identity this year. They're pretty solid defensively too. I think they do a good job of at times just mucking up the game if they need to. They can play a little bit faster. I think they're pretty adaptable, which has been important for them too. But yeah, credit to Ben Johnson, who we'll see how this rest of the season plays out, and they have a couple tough games coming up too. But Ben Johnson will have a legit case for Big Ten Coach of the Year, and if it's based like last year's voting, then it should be Ben Johnson over Matt Painter.
Yeah, I mean, if we're being honest here, and I know this might upset some Michigan State fans for me to say this, and that's fine. Whatever. I've made fans mad before, and you'll get my mentions and tell me how stupid I am. Whatever. But Minnesota and Michigan State, in my mind, should be flip-flopped. Michigan State is having the season that people perceive Minnesota to have, and Minnesota is having this season that kind of people perceive Michigan State is having, because people look at Michigan State and say oh yeah, this is a tournament team. I've said early on, this isn't a tournament team. Michigan State's not going to make the tournament. I know people are still saying they are, and we just had a guest on, Ryan, last time, who said he thinks he thinks they are going to make the tournament, and I don't see it. I don't see them being able to get the wins. I don't see them being impressive enough. The only way I see them getting into the tournament is if they're on the bubble and they just do Tom Izzo a favor to keep the tournament streak going, which we can talk about all those things, but and one of the biggest reasons why is because the numbers don't like Minnesota as much. Minnesota is 73rd in KenPom. Their offense ranks 99th, and their defense ranks 48th. And so it's when you only have one side of the ball inside the top 50, you're not doing as well, when in fact I think Minnesota's just a better team. I don't think they're the better coached team, but at least in this game, I felt like Ben Johnson coached a better game than Tom Izzo did. And, like I said, it's not really something that people are going to take into account right away, but I think that's what we're looking at here, where this Minnesota team is better than Michigan State this year, and people need to start realizing that they probably have a better chance of making the tournament this year based on play alone, and not thoughts of coaches and things like that instead of Michigan State. Is that crazy to say, Brant? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy to say at all. I mean, you just saw Minnesota go out and outplay them and just kind of prove on the court they're the better team, given they were at home. But the game was right there for Michigan State's taking, and they didn't take it. I think Minnesota is the better team at this point. I do not think that Michigan State's a tournament team. You can't count out Tom Izzo in March. He's still got a little time here to turn his season around. But at the same time, we've seen all these legendary coaches kind of fizzle out and retire over the past 2 years. And Tom Izzo, it just seems like, is the next one up. I'd be honestly kind of surprised if we saw him back at Michigan State even next season. I think this could be his final rodeo potentially. If not, next season he might. I don't know if he'd be the type of guy to kind of declare before the season, like Coach K, like, hey, this is my final rodeo. I don't think he's that kind of guy. I think he'll kind of just ride off into the sunset when it's his time. And I could see it being this year. With NIL, Michigan State hasn't really been a team that's been in the transfer portal getting a lot of guys. So I think it's a new era of college basketball, and it's kind of surpassed Tom Izzo, in my opinion.
Yeah, when we look at like March, I think it's fair right now to say Minnesota is a better team than Michigan State. The thing that hurts Minnesota is they quite literally, like per Ken Pom, quite literally had the easiest non-conference schedule in the entire country. And so just that, which I don't blame, right? I don't blame Ben Johnson and Minnesota for scheduling that way when you have, they have 2 Big Ten wins last year and like 9 total. You just want to get some W's with a lot of new players, a pretty young team. You want to get a lot of W's early on, and maybe that, if they schedule harder, then they're struggling more in Big Ten because they haven't been able to figure out how to win. So totally don't blame them there. And that's where Michigan State's able to scrape by and still be in the tourney combo, is they have a couple good wins. Michigan State now has a very, very big game Saturday at home against Illinois. A win there is going to make things look a lot better. But their next 5, home at Illinois, or home against Illinois, at Penn State, at Michigan, home against Iowa, home against Ohio State. Like, obviously we just saw Wisconsin lose at Michigan today, so anything can happen, but you would assume Michigan State should be favored in all 5 of those, or at least 4 of those. And then the Illinois game is probably Illinois slightly. But they put themselves in this hole where they just can't afford losses, right? If they had picked off Minnesota at Minnesota, you can maybe afford to drop one in there. I don't know if they can do that anymore. They have the talent to win all 5, but we said earlier, I just don't know if they have the consistency for all their players to win all 5 of those before finishing up the season.
Even if Minnesota doesn't make the tournament, if they can make the NIT, that's such a big step for them as a program. Just trying to, especially if you can keep a lot of guys and just, get consistency and build continuity, that could be a huge kind of, jump into next season, into hopefully, finishing maybe in that top half of the Big Ten.
Yeah, for sure. I was just looking at the schedule here when Joe was talking about it for Minnesota and Michigan State, and it's so weird because I look at Michigan State, they have Illinois, at Penn State, at Michigan, Iowa, Ohio State, at Purdue, Northwestern, at Indiana. They have them winning all of those games except for one against Purdue, which, I don't know. Sure, based on the numbers, sure. But I don't believe in this Michigan State team that they're going to be able to do that. Call me a hater, whatever you want, that's fine. And then I look over at Minnesota's, and they have Minnesota going 4-5 in their last 9 games of the season. They have them losing away to Iowa, Purdue, obviously, away against Nebraska, away against Illinois, and then away at Northwestern. Those are hard games on the road, but I feel like Minnesota could pick up one of those. At least Iowa, they might be able to pick that one up, but we'll see. It's not an easy road toward the end of the season for Minnesota, but you're right, Evan. Even if they just get to the NIT, that's a huge step for them. So
I'd be curious to see how this Michigan State team, at the end of the year, how much it mirrors maybe last year's North Carolina team, where the year prior to that, they were an 8-9 seed in the tournament, made a run to the championship game, brought everybody back, were preseason number 1, and then were worse than mediocre last year. And then kind of the same thing with Michigan State. Last year they made a tournament run, weren't great last year, but made a run, brought everybody back, were preseason top 5, and now they find themselves kind of borderline mediocre at times.
This is all setting up Michigan State just sneaking into the first 4 and then going to the final 4 somehow. That's what this is.
2021 or whatever.
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
They're just going to figure out a way, and then Hogarth's going to be a top 3-point guard in the country for a 4-game span. And Walker's going to not miss, and somehow it'll just all work because that's just what Izzo does.
Yep.
Say Walker's going to have to be playing National Player of the Year level for that to happen.
Yeah.
We have a few comments here. Ali Babwa, friend of the program, was on a football show one time. Appreciate you. Minnesota is currently 4th in the Big Ten. Yes, that won't hold, but it's impressive. No, I don't think it'll hold. Obviously, like we talked about the schedule there, but I I could see them finishing in the top half of the Big Ten, which for them would be awesome based off what happened last year. Casual Big Ten, Kent, Parker, Fox, emphasis on the X factor. Yes, yeah. I wasn't even the one that mentioned him, Kent, so there you go. Somebody else mentioned him. That's a huge step. And then Sonny, I'm glad you brought this up. I do want to talk about this. So Michigan State is 12-2 at home. Only losses are to Wisconsin and Arizona. All right. Yes, I think that's important to look at. However, look at who they have beat at home: Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, Rutgers, Penn State, Indiana State, Stony Brook, Oakland. Baylor says semi-home. I don't know what that means. I guess that's in there.
It's Detroit.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Okay. Yeah, I still call that a neutral. Oh, and Arizona was a neutral, it says. So
yeah, we're forgetting that James Madison lost at home.
Oh, yes, there we go.
First game of the season,
Yeah. Okay, so not Arizona, it's James Madison instead. But like I look at like those 12 wins that they've had at home, and like no disrespect to those other teams, I just talked up Minnesota, but like it's not exactly any like high caliber wins at home. They have Illinois coming in at home on Saturday. So, if they can get that one, but Sonny, I'm sure you don't want that to happen. So,
yeah, they're fortunate that they're very fortunate, obviously, that they stomped Baylor, and then they're fortunate that the Indiana State win is doing very, very
incredible
well
right now.
Yeah. So that's helping the numbers a lot too.
I think, is that Indiana State a quad one? Is it top 35 or top 30? You have to be 30. Okay, so they're 34th right now.
It might be 35. I can't remember, but
it's
Sycamore's
probably
playing well.
Borderline quad one if it isn't.
Yeah. So, all right. We do want to, before we move on, do want to remind you about sponsor of the show, CBB Analytics. They give me a free pro tier to tell you about them each and every episode. I love using CBB Analytics. Going back, doing their game recaps are one of the best things about them, and then also just the in-depth stats they have to talk about which players are leading in these areas, and then not only that, they give you the rankings, but they also give you like percentages for how well this player is doing based on other players, and they give like the more green it is, the better it is, the more red it is, the worse it is, and stuff like that. And not only is it really cool stats, but just the formatting and everything with it is really awesome. You don't have to have a subscription or to pay to use it, so even if you're somebody that you're like, well, I don't want to pay for it, it's all good. Go check it out. It's free. CBB Analytics. They'll get you right, and like I said, a lot of fun stats and things like that for you to look at. All right, guys. Had another team go in and win on the road. Rutgers takes it to Maryland. I got to be honest, there was very little offense in this game. 56-53. I think I looked up at one time and like the first half was almost over and nobody had even scored 20 yet. And I was like, yeesh, here we go. But two strong defensive teams. Rutgers was able to start pulling ahead a little bit, and Maryland was able to bring it back, make it close, but Rutgers was obviously able to take this one. Joe, I'm curious, what were your thoughts on Rutgers beating Maryland?
Yeah, I mean, this was being billed as just going to be a rock fight, and it was. Rutgers per KenPom, I think right now 300th in offense, second in defense. Maryland's like 190th in offense and sixth in defense. Neither of these teams have capabilities of scoring the ball at times, and they are both very elite at not allowing the other team to score. Like it wouldn't have shocked me if this game stayed under 100 points total. Some free throw stuff at the end, like kind of pushed it over the edge. But I think in a lot of ways it's telling for Rutgers. This is their second game with Jeremiah Williams. They are now 2-0 with him, and he has provided a huge spark for them. 14 points, 5 rebounds, and just in an offense like Rutgers where, like I mentioned with Minnesota, how last year I just didn't know what their identity was. Like I have no clue what Rutgers at times even wants to do on offense. They just don't have that guy like, a Geo Baker from before, or even last year. Like you had Caleb McConnell that could get a pull up. You had Paul Mulcahy who could essentially do what is now coined as booty ball.
You had Cam Spencer who could knock down threes.
Yeah, Cam Spencer. I forgot about him. Exactly. Yeah. Now it's like Jeremiah Williams is that guy, at least in these 2 games, that has been able to create for himself. He has that energy to him. He's kind of, honestly, offensively is what I think people were wanting from Derek Simpson this year, is kind of what it's felt like in this short sample size. Really skilled with the ball. and he had no assists in this game, but I know his prior years was very good at facilitating the ball too. It sucks that the NCAA just dragged their feet with because he was not playing. I think it was like I don't know if it was gambling or something like that. But they just took forever and basically ruling him eligible. He's been ruled eligible for 2 games. They look a lot better. Obviously, it's too late now, but looking at next year when they do bring in Harper and Ace Bailey, Jeremiah Williams should be a good fit alongside them. Flipping to Maryland, this is just like the most Maryland game ever of like Julian Reese had a good game. Jameer Young did not have a good game, but he still was able to get something. And then they got absolutely nothing from everybody else. And that's just been the story of their season. I was super high on them coming into the year, so I'm pretty sad to see them play the way they are. But 2 of 18 from 3, and both of them come from Jameer Young. Like, you're just not going to win many games, even if it's against Rutgers. You're just not going to win many games that way.
No, yeah, for sure. Jameer Young, it's so wild because, yes, he shot 3 for 17, so obviously it wasn't a good game. But if you just look at like the points and rebounds, he had a double-double. 16 points, 12 rebounds. But you're not going to be able to win when Jameer Young is not efficient enough. I don't know how you go 3 for 17 other than like you are just your entire team's offense and you just have to keep shooting because you know that even though you're 3 for 17, you're still the best option to score out there because nobody else really is, and that's hard for them. Quick stat before we move on here because I found this earlier today. You guys want to know who the only 2 teams in the Big Ten are to win 2 back-to-back away games this year? One of them's Purdue, obviously, and Rutgers. Rutgers just won back-to-back away games at Michigan, at Maryland. They are projected to lose like all of their games except for 2 the rest of the season. But still, like, hey, we got something that only Rutgers and Purdue has done in the conference. So that's pretty impressive. Brant, what were your thoughts on the Rutgers win over Maryland?
Yeah, I mean, my number one takeaway was exactly what Joe said about Jeremiah Williams. For Rutgers, it feels like, I mean, it's all about 2024, 2025 for them. This season's kind of a wash. They're not going to make a tournament. They're not probably going to win too many games the rest of the year, like you just mentioned, JR. But for them to go on the road and, kind of shut down Maryland completely and just play to their brand. Steve Feichel loves the defense. There's not too many players who can put the ball in the hoop on this team this year. But to go and do that on the road and a tough place to play and get the win, definitely impressive, especially with the kind of season they've had so far. And then, yeah, just the emergence of Jeremiah Williams. The one thing I was really interested to see about Rutgers going into next season, they've got the 2 superstar freshmen coming in, but who's going to be alongside them? Because you can't just stick a bunch of freshmen out there and expect it to gel and just be one of the top teams in the conference. But this guy is going to be he'll be a senior. I'm not sure how many years of eligibility he has left. I know there's some kind of weird things with transfers and injuries with him. So he's definitely going to be one of the older players on their roster next year. And to just even get him out there this year and kind of gel with some of the guys who they have right now, definitely a good leg up for them going into next season. And he seems like he'll be the perfect fit with those 2 freshmen coming in next year.
Yeah, I was just looking at that up when you were talking, Brant. The guards, Davis, Simpson, and Williams will all be back. But I don't know if there's any kind of COVID stuff going on here. But Hyatt, Amourier, and Mag are all seniors. So unless one of them has some secret COVID eligibility that I don't know about, which is so strange.
Amourier and Mag have it if they want.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I know Amourier tweeted at the beginning of the year, like one last ride. And Mag, I think, almost didn't come back this year. He could come back, but that's for those.
I know Amourier almost went to the NBA after last season. I know he was testing the waters there. He's probably out. And then it just feels like a changing of the guard because these guys, Hyatt, Amourier, Mag, they've been in the program for years. And I doubt they kind of hang around as it's, a new era of Rutgers basketball going into next season. Just kind of my feel for the situation.
Yeah. Plus, obviously, I assume some people will transfer out for Rutgers. Like usually, everybody's just going to have at least 1 or 2 probably. Yeah. But if nobody transfers out, they only have 1 scholarship open because they do have 5 incoming freshmen. So,
yeah. Hell, it'll be a very freshman team. Jeremiah Williams will be a senior, so he'll be kind of the leader with the experience, I guess, on that team. So it'll be very interesting. Evan, before we move on, what were your thoughts on the game?
I thought it's more just in Maryland about Maryland overall. Kind of like what Joe was saying. I was pretty high on Maryland coming into the year. I thought, with what they brought back, with what they were bringing in, I thought they could be, definitely compete for a top 4 spot in the conference. And they just have been probably one of the bigger disappointments in the conference, in my opinion. I thought they were starting to turn around at the end of January. They got 2 wins back to back, but then they've dropped 2 in a row now. And I think this one, dropping a home game to a bad Rutgers team that almost, maybe puts the nail in the coffin to any sort of tournament hopes they had, unless they can go on a tear at the end of the year. But just been a total disappointment for them this year.
Yeah, I mean, we've said it before, but Harris Smith has been nowhere near the offensive production that you've wanted. Jordan Geronimo, okay defender, but he's bringing literally nothing to the offense.
He's not doing what he did at Indiana, which is not a whole lot.
Right. And sometimes that's different, like sometimes it's like a change of scenery can make something happen.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, not for Jordan Geronimo. He still no offense. So he had a block in the game, so that's good.
Yeah.
But, all right, let's move on to the next one. Brant, Ohio State. I don't even know if I should say anything or if I should just turn it over to you. I'm mad. I don't like my team very much right now, and it's getting harder and harder to watch basketball games where there is a team from Ohio involved in it. What are your thoughts, Brant?
Yeah, I had the absolute pleasure of being in attendance at that game the other night.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it wasn't fun. Let's just leave it at that. And I was there with one of my buddies who's an Indiana fan, so he's kind of almost equally as frustrated with the way their season's going. We have that 18-point lead. I turn to him and I say, just watch. Just watch. and little did I know, I spoke it right into existence. I mean, come on. Like, I don't even have words. Yeah. It's just ridiculous. And I heard it on the Michigan-Wisconsin broadcast today. I forget who was calling that game, but they said losing is contagious. And it just kind of, once you lose one and you lose another, it's just kind of within your mentality and it just starts to pile up. And that just seems to have happened to this Ohio State team, we're in almost every game and we find a way to lose every single game. Right now, I forget if it's 1-8 or 1-9 in the last 9 or 10 games, but it's not pretty and it's really frustrating.
Hey, we got a Fisherman here with us, which, by the way, Fisherman, you are one of my favorite listeners. We talk about Ohio State in here like every time we talk about them, so you're like in the misery with me, and I appreciate it. Holtman is broken after that presser last night. Yes, if you want to go watch a press conference of a coach who was very, very frustrated and holding back every ounce of anger that he had, to not like go at the media and not just go like scream at his players and fist clenched the entire time. It was uncomfortable to watch, but I did watch it, and yeah, he was, man. I don't know. I could feel the awkwardness and the anger and the fresh. I could feel it through the screen, and I wasn't even watching live, so like it wasn't even that. But he's also saying, by the way, Ohio State is 8-24 in Big Ten play in the last 2 years. Yeah, these 2 years have just absolutely destroyed Holtman's teams, and I don't know. On the bright side, Frank likes your background, Joe. So we have that.
Thanks.
It's just been bad. I do feel for Chris Holtman. He's a great guy, and he brought the end of Thad's tenure was equally. I mean, it wasn't this bad, but it was getting pretty bad to where we missed the tournament a few years in a row, and he stepped in and brought him right back to the tournament. Had him competing again in the Big Ten, but you can't even really pinpoint where the problems are because there's so many. So Ohio State's just in need of a shakeup, and I think everyone knows the writing's on the wall for a kind of change of the guard heading into this offseason. So it'll be interesting to see what this offseason brings for Ohio State basketball, but the rest of the season, I can't foresee it getting too much better. I mean, I know there was that Big Ten tournament run last March, which was really out of nowhere and kind of fun to watch. It'll be interesting to see if they somehow catch fire again in the tournament and potentially save Chris Holtmann last second. But I don't know. I think he's too far gone.
Yeah, no, I just think there's no confidence on the team right now. And it's hard. It's hard to watch. Every time something happens, you can just see like all the heads go down of all the players, and it's just like immediately.
There's no fire. There's no will to win. It's just like it's a team that's kind of accepted what they are, and they've accepted losses, and it's sad because there's talent on that team that they can win these games. That they're no less talented than half the conference, but it's just they kind of accepted where they are, and that's where we are right now.
Yeah, Frank, I do see your question there. We'll get to that at the end. I want to make sure we also talk about Indiana because, they did come back by like 18 points and win with like 17 points left in the game. So
yeah,
I do think they deserve some talking about. Evan, we'll go to you for that. Your thoughts on the game, Ohio State, Indiana, whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, so my wife's an Indiana grad, so I've had I wouldn't call it pleasure of watching about every single Indiana game this year alongside her. So it's funny to see, like, again, the game was going on yesterday, and we try and keep our biases aside whenever we watch Steelers teams. And at one point early in the first half, I turned around like, this is an awful basketball game. Like, Ohio State was up by like 12, but I was like, as a basketball fan, I was like hurt to watch it because it just was not a good game. I was actually recording our podcast last night during when they made the comeback, because I pulled the game up on my phone, and I think they're up like 15, and then all of a sudden I kept seeing like miss jumper, miss shot. So it just felt like Ohio State couldn't put the ball in the hoop. Indiana kind of like Ohio State has a lot of talent. They just haven't been able to put it together. I don't think they're a great basketball team. But I mean, if the one guy who can really be a catalyst for that team is Galloway, and he got them going last night. And Malik Renew's a great player. I couldn't believe they made the comeback. But so I apologize for your Buckeyes, because I was laughing during the game until they made the comeback, and I was a little pissed off.
We were pissed off too. It's okay.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, and this is honestly, it was a game I thought, like, before I looked at it, but I was like, this is a game that could get Holtmann fired on the spot, until I realized that his buyout was $15 million before April 1st. So that probably won't happen until then. But
yeah. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I think starting with Holtmann and Ohio State, like the toughest thing with it is when you look at Ken Palm's like strength of schedule in conference play, Ohio State's had the easiest schedule in the Big Ten, and they're still 3-9. And like, obviously the season's like done at this point after, I don't know what they officially got ranked at some point, but like they were definitely a top 25 team early in the season, 12-2 overall. And now, yeah, just where they're at, it's just tough to see. Hopefully Bruce Thornton doesn't leave. I'm purely speculating, have literally no clue. But I could see him wanting a change of scenery. And that's just, I think him and Gale is where it starts. Is for the first 14 games, they had a legitimate case for being the best backcourt in the Big Ten. And now I don't know if they're top 3 off the top of my head. I would have to like really sit down and think about it. It starts with them, and then you have no bench. Zed Key hasn't been great this year. It's just been rough. And then on the Indiana side, I will say I was very locked into Rutgers, Maryland, whatever that says about me. So I missed the first half I was just kind of more box score watching the first half of this. And then the second half turns on, and I'm like, I just tweeted, I was like, is Ohio State going to do this thing again? And turns out they did. Malik Renew is really, really good at basketball, and he was able just to dominate. 26 points, 14 rebounds. Like, he is the guy for Indiana that it feels like for most games they can count on to be their go-to guy. And then, like Evan said, Trey Galloway is like, he has these random games where he's just like, all right, I'm going to take over. Really, really good at getting to his floater. He has not shot the ball well at all from 3, but he does, like, he's in the 20%, I think, for 3 on the year. Goes 3 of 4, so you get that going too with it. And that's really all they needed, right? They combined 51 points between the two players. Anthony Leal comes in off the bench, knocks down a corner 3 to get for the game winner.
His only shot of the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think there was a clip I saw on Twitter of like, it was like a huddle, and Anthony Leal, like, it was a huddle, and it was Indiana, and it was sometime in the second half. Anthony Leal told them, he's like, hey, we're going to win this game right here. And I don't know exactly what the score was at that point or anything like that. But when you look at that, and then you compare to what we could kind of see body language wise from Ohio State, like you guys said, like heads down, just like, is this happening again? And I think that's pretty telling of the game right there.
Yeah, their body language. That I think they showed the huddle before the last play of the game, and they were just you could tell they were just cooked. Like it was, yeah. You would have thought it was like they were down by 10 and had 3 seconds left instead of only down 3.
Yeah. Fisherman makes some good points here. Issue for Ohio State is when Felix gets in foul trouble, they have no one else, and that was the hope this year, was like Zed Key might be like a 6th man of the year type of candidate or something like that. And even earlier on in the season, he was doing well rebounding and scoring and stuff like that. And he wasn't awful in this game. He had 6 points on 13 minutes, but I mean, at the end of the day, Fisherman's right. Like you need some more production in there, especially some like defensive presence. But that's not who Zed Key is. Ever since he's lost all this weight, he hasn't had the defensive presence that he once did before. And then the 12-2 that you were talking about, Joe, that was right after they beat Bama, which I still don't know how that happened, but it happened. And I jinxed them because I literally tweeted out right before that Penn State game. I was like, man, Ohio State needs to be ranked when they were 12-2. They weren't ranked yet. Of course, that was the first 18-point lead of the season blown. So I didn't even tweet anything good about Ohio State before this game. So Brant, I think this one's for us from Frank. OSU crew, who would you like to see as your new head coach? Fisherman said Lamont Paris, the South Carolina. He seems to like Michi Johnson, so maybe Michi Johnson makes a return to Ohio State. I don't know if he has eligibility. I don't know. I never know how much eligibility everybody has.
Yeah, it's tough with all the COVID. Lamont Paris is actually, I think he's from Cleveland. He's from either Cleveland or Cincy. I forget which one, but he's from the state, so definitely an interesting name. Jerome Tang, I see Frank bringing up. I think that's another really interesting one. I don't know if he'd want to jump Kansas State to Ohio State. I don't know if that's, maybe a bit of a jump, maybe more on the lateral side. I've heard a lot of different names kind of circulating out there. Some of the like lower key, lesser known guys. Pat Kelsey is one that's been brought up a lot. The coach over at Charleston, he's another guy with Ohio ties who has just been kind of cruising through the mid majors, and is kind of one of those up and coming kind of guys. Or you could always see Ohio State just take a swing on a big name with maybe a bit of dirt, like Rick Pitino or Will Wade. But
Chris Beard.
Chris Beard. Not sure if we're gonna do that, but you never know with the new AD. He comes from the South. He just likes to win. He doesn't care about the baggage. So we'll see. We'll see if we take a swing like that.
Fisherman saying Findlay. I don't know.
That's right. Yeah, Lamont Paris is from Findlay.
Oh, he's from Findlay. Okay, I was like, I know Findlay College, but okay. Thanks, Fisherman. I tell you, I would be ecstatic to get somebody like Jerome Tang, somebody I want that nobody else wants because of his background. But at this point, I'm like, screw it, just bring somebody in who can win, and that's Sean Miller or even Wes Miller. One of those guys. I know IU fans don't like the name Miller, so I won't name the other one. But I at this point, I used to be one of those guys that's like, no, I would never want a cheater to coach at my school or anything like that. And at this point, I want there to be fans in the arena, and I want us to not blow 18-point leads. So if Chris Beard or Sean Miller can make that happen, I might be okay with it.
Fair enough.
Am I crazy, Brant?
I don't think you're too crazy. I'm kind of along the same lines as you. I just want to see your team compete again.
It's like at a certain point when you get so hurt, you lose your morals,
Yeah.
There's another guy up in West Lafayette that's pretty good. Painter, I think is his name. Might be able to.
It's not bad.
See it.
One. I have no clue if this guy is going to leave or if they'd want to take a shot. But Josh Hurts at Indiana State would, if Ohio State's going to take like a shot on a mid major, that seems like that's going to be the guy. No clue if he even wants to leave Indiana State this year, but that'd be just somebody else I would throw out.
Yeah, and you've heard like rumors of like things going on at Arkansas, so maybe Musselman wants out. I mean, it's another big name that is crazy enough. You never know.
And then another mid major that's kind of circulating too. I know a lot of IU ties here, but Dusty May, with the last 2 years he's had, definitely going to be a really hot name on the coaching market coming up here this offseason. Could easily see him hopping
Indiana. Oh, sorry. Indiana fans would be so mad if he went to Ohio State.
They would, but I think that's kind of a gamble to take as well, because what's stopping him from going to Indiana after Woodson's done?
Mm-hmm. There's thoughts too that he may stay. Like supposedly his wife and them love Florida, so like he could step into Miami when Larinaga retires or whatever. But you never know. Money talks.
Right.
Say, do you love millions of dollars too?
Right. Yeah. For Midwest winters, yeah.
Yeah, because Big Ten, we got millions of dollars now with all the TV stuff. I was gonna say the other moral I'd be willing to drop is like ripping off your shirt after a basketball game. So I'd be fine with the Eric Musselman. That's another moral that I'm okay with.
Chris Collins does that too. You can maybe try and poach him.
Yeah. I forgot about that. And he hugs the other team's players as he
does.
Too.
Yeah.
Oh, I love seeing coaches get ejected. It's hilarious. All right, let's go to our last one. So this is the preview of Indiana and Purdue coming up. Since we had our two Purdue guys on, I wanted to make sure that we took time to address the Purdue basketball team as well. Here's your sneak peek hint. Indiana, not very good. Purdue, very good. Probably will be an ugly game at Mackey Arena. Joe, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is a game that Purdue should take care of. They've been dominant at home. I don't see why it'd be different. The only reason it'd be different is that it's a rivalry game, and quite literally anything can happen in those games. Indiana bangs 4-3. It's in the first 8 minutes, and Purdue starts 0-5, and you just figure it out from there. But yeah, I mean, you look at Purdue took care of business at Indiana, and that was a game where pretty much everybody for Purdue was clicking. It felt like, even I know Braden Smith shot terribly, but like he just absolutely controlled that game. It literally was, he just missed open jumpers for the most part. I think he had 9 assists and some he just iced up the Indiana defense, and Indiana just they especially, and most teams have to make the decision, but Indiana especially, they just have to make the decision of, are you going to let Edey go for 40 and not let anything happen on the perimeter? Are you going to try to take away Edey and live with what Purdue does with elsewhere? But like I said, Braden Smith tore him up. Aside from literally making shots, obviously, and I know that's a pretty big part of basketball. But Fletcher Lawyer was really good. Lance Jones was really good. Purdue is shooting 44% from 3 at home. Like, they're obviously, they're a top 5 shooting team regardless, but at home, everybody just knocks down shots. So you have to make the decision. I would guess that you try to just let Edey do his thing, and he's had really good success against Indiana in pretty much all of his games, at least on the individual standpoint. Like, I don't see why this would be different. For the Indiana side, Renew has to just be better, and Purdue did a great job last game of basically just making it so that way it was everybody but Renew had to try to beat Purdue, and Indiana just, especially at that point, I think they've had McBacco looks better. Trey Galloway has the potential to be like a guy that can go for 20, like against Ohio State. But Purdue did such a good job of making Renew just basically not really a big part of that game. Only had 8 points, and they did a good job of taking away that big to big pass by they put Edey on Ware, they put whoever the 4 was on Renew, and if they were going to double Renew, it came from a guard, and they were basically saying, shoot threes. If you hit them, we'll figure it out from there. And IU wasn't terrible, 8 for 24, but they would have to shoot, they'll have to shoot way, way better than that if they want a chance in this one.
Mm-hmm. Genuine question for you Purdue guys, just because I don't know off the top of my head. When is the last time that Purdue lost at Mackey?
I can find last year.
IU game last year.
IU game last year. So
Jalen Hutchifino went off. Jalen Hutchifino went off. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
I mean,
Jackson Davis and Mason Gillis almost got in a fight when they had their stare down.
Yeah,
Mackey, I think.
Yeah, I mean, anything can happen, like you said. Last time that they lost was actually this game, but very different IU team, night and day from what we had last year. Completely expect Purdue to wipe the floor. I'd say it's a disappointment if you don't win by 20 plus.
Yeah, this game. I'm from Indiana. I grew up around this rivalry my whole life, so I hate this game so much, especially the fact that my wife's on the other side of it too. This game always makes me nervous just because of, again, it's a rivalry, you never know. And plus, I mean, Indiana went into Illinois not too long ago and played really, really well. So that gives me a little bit of reservations, but then I also remember that, for the most part this year, in games that, have really mattered to the guys who have come, everybody who came back from Purdue, like they played pretty pissed off. They lost at Rutgers, or losing to Rutgers last year. They went into Rutgers and played pissed off. They went into Indiana and played pissed off this year and did really well. So hopefully they remember that game from last year. And yeah, I think they should win by 20 plus. I could definitely see, Painter calling off the dogs a little early because he has a tendency to do that. But yeah, hopefully they can take care of business. And I was hoping last night's game would kind of put the nail in Indiana's coffin and they would come with their heads hung a little low, but they might be feeling themselves a little bit. But hopefully Purdue can squash that pretty quickly.
Fisherman saying, Purdue, congrats on your regular season title.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think after the win against Wisconsin, as long as you do what you're supposed to do, it's safe. You are in control of your own destiny, so that's nice. I think the part of this game that is interesting is, like, last year IU had the players to be able to beat Purdue, and they were able to play in such a way that could beat Purdue. The issue this year is they don't, like, even though they have some of the same players, they don't have, like, the same tendencies and the same abilities to do what they need to do in order to beat Purdue, because Kalaware is, like, their only big guy who can make a difference down there. No offense to Peyton Sparks, but, he's just not – he's not good enough to do that. And Malik Renew, you can't get that guy in foul trouble. He's too important to the Indiana offense for him to get in any kind of foul trouble. And quite frankly, if you want to beat Purdue, you have to shoot the three ball really, really well and put pressure on them to guard the perimeter. Let's be honest. Indiana really stinks at shooting the three ball. So, yeah. I mean, I don't remember the exact stats, but there was like a good part of the game. I think it was at the beginning of the second half when Indiana had their starters back out there and Mbako and Galloway were hitting some threes and, they were able to make some things happen. But then again, of course, Malik Renew got in foul trouble, and then Kalaware started getting in foul trouble. And it's like your entire front court, just basically falls away, and you just have no chance after that. You have to have depth in order to beat Purdue. You have to have guard play. I mean, you have to literally have everything in order to beat Purdue. And IU does not have everything. So
Yeah. It'd be interesting what happens with – yeah. Oh, go ahead, Brant.
I was going to say, if they want even the slightest fighting chance, one, they're going to need Xavier Johnson healthy because Gabe Cupps just can't play to that level yet. And two, they're going to need Xavier Johnson and Galloway just putting the most pressure anybody could put on anybody, on Braden Smith and on Fletcher Loyer. You just need to hammer them the entire game. And that's the only way that, because if they get the ball into Edey, it's over. If they're open for a three, it's over. You just need to – I mean, it's how anyone beats Purdue is just by pressuring those two guys. And that they've gotten better at handling the pressure this year. But, I don't think there's a chance. But we'll see if Xavier Johnson's out there. That I don't know. I don't think there's going to be a fighting chance for the Hoosiers.
It'd be interesting with Ware because good chance, because Ware went down. Obviously, that end of yesterday's game went down. It was really awkwardly. So you're wondering, it looks maybe like a hyperextension. I mean, he walked off on his own power, but it wasn't the cleanest of walks. So we'll see, how banged up he is. But they've had the injury bug all year. But he played, and he played Edey better than I thought he would the first time in Bloomington. Because I feel like this year when you watched Ware against any sort of legitimate big man, he didn't have the games that he had against Kennesaw State or something like that. So I gave him credit, but then he got in foul trouble, and that was kind of when the game really turned.
Yeah, it seems like Ware or New is walking off every single game. They're always banged up, and if you lose one of them for any minutes at all, Purdue's going to go on a run.
Yeah, it's so far this year like. A lot of things have had to go both ways in order for Purdue to lose, and it's you look at both games that they lost at Northwestern, at Nebraska. Northwestern shot 50% from three. Nebraska shot 61% from three. They got good looks, so I'm not taking that away from them. But like you really right now, because Purdue, unlike last year, can beat you in so many ways. Edie can put up 35 and 14, or Braden Smith can have a near triple double, or Lance Jones can go for 20, or any of the role players can hit 3 or 4 threes now. You need to play a pretty perfect game, knock down threes, and force turnovers. And then it's at that point, you're still just kind of hoping, right? You can make Edie at least. Edie's going to get his. You're hoping he has to work really hard for it. And then you hope the guards have an off night, right? That Northwestern game, Braden Smith fell apart down the stretch. He ended up with 6 turnovers. The Nebraska game, Purdue just never was quite in it. It felt like, and Nebraska took advantage and knocked down an insane amount of threes. Indiana's going to have to do a similar thing where they, knock down probably 12 threes and they force Purdue into 14 plus turnovers or something like that is pretty much the formula right now. And even then, Purdue had a very good chance against Northwestern to win that one. The Nebraska one, they were in it, and then the final score bloomed out a little bit. And then both of those are on the road. Purdue hasn't done that at Mackey. I'm actually, now that I think about it, I don't know what their closest. Oh, they beat Illinois by 6 at home. And then Northwestern.
Yeah, which obviously that game, the score was a little bit higher because of the technical free throws, but
true.
And again, Northwestern that game was hitting everything they were throwing up. I mean, even if their open shots, the ones that were missing, they were hitting everything when they had a hand in their face.
Yeah.
Question of the game, and this is going to be the most important part: over under 30 free throws for Purdue.
Let's see.
They had 27, I think it was last game.
Okay.
Against Indiana.
I'm trying to. So Indiana, they're about average in defensive free throw rate. That first game, Purdue had 27.
Yep, 27.
I don't know. I would say under. Probably at 20.
28. 28 was my guess. Yeah.
I was going to guess 24, 25. Because also I think this is just out of hand. And so
I think 30 is a great line. I could see it either way. But yeah, I mean, the worst job in the world to have is being a Big Ten ref and reffing a Purdue game. Just because, I mean, you have to blow your whistle every single time Edie touches the ball. It's either him fouling or the defense fouling. There's just the way he plays. He's so physical. He's so big. There's going to be elbows thrown. There's going to be hands thrown. People are going to reach. And you can't call them all because you can't just stand there and blow your whistle all game. So it's a tough job, and people get really upset about the calls they make. But at the end of the day, what are you supposed to do?
I said it the last episode on Sunday. I said we're no longer going to be talking about fouls when we cover Purdue games because it's just so toxic. And at the end of the day, what the arguments people make are not usually that valid. And then I had a guy comment on the video and say, what do you guys have against fouls? What the heck? You guys got to talk about fouls. That's a part of the game. And I'm like, well, I don't want to talk about it, so it's not happening. I do need to go through, though, and figure out how many Big Ten games the winner who was the team who shot more free throws. You got to figure that out. Indiana shot 9 last time they played Purdue to Purdue's 27. So, we'll see.
That's part of what Purdue does.
Yeah, we'll see if they can get over 10. All right, good breakdown there. Any more thoughts on Purdue, Indiana before we end it here?
No, it should be a good game. Should be a very good environment as always at Mackey Arena. So, I'm excited for it.
Mm-hmm. Same.
Everybody's picking Purdue to win, I assume.
Yeah.
Nobody's stupid. Just kidding. All right, well, that's what we got for this episode. Thank you, everybody, for joining us who was watching. Thank you to you guys. Go ahead and tell people where they can find you at, if you have a podcast or a YouTube channel or anything like that. Joe, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at JoeJacksonCBB. I do a lot of film breakdown and things like that, specifically in the Big Ten. I have a YouTube channel called Feed the Post, where it's more long form video content of different game. Go through some plays, kind of break down what's going on there. So those are the places you can find me.
Awesome, Evan.
Yeah, I co-host a Purdue podcast called Boiler Breakdown with two of my good friends. We've been lifelong friends, lifelong Purdue fans. You can find us at Boiler Break Pod on Twitter, Instagram. And then my personal Twitter's at ET_Webb. I do most of my tweeting from our Boiler Breakdown podcast, though. So unless you just like retweets of Purdue and music, you can might as well just follow the Boiler Breakdown podcast.
There you go. Brant?
Yeah, and then for me, kind of the same as Evan. Don't really do much tweeting for my personal, but you can find Big Banter. I'm the founder and CEO of Big Banter Sports. Find us at Big Banter Sports over on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, really wherever you find your socials. We've got it up there. Parent company of podcasts such as the Boiler Breakdown and the Big Ten Huddle. And then check us out on our website over at bigbantersports.com. Lots of great blog content, and just you can find all the podcasts that you need over there within the Big Ten.
Very good. Oh, and one more thing. Next Sunday is the Super Bowl, so my wife is a big Taylor Swift fan, so we have a Super Bowl party that she has been planning. The only time in my life that my wife has ever planned a Super Bowl party. It'll be interesting to see. I've seen like Instagram videos of like girls planning their Super Bowl parties, and I got to be honest, it's not what I normally go to for Super Bowl parties. So. So we'll see what it's like. So we will not be podcasting next Sunday night. Instead, me and Kent will be on Monday night, and we'll be, instead of like recapping games, we'll be doing like some end of the season award predictions, stuff like that. We'll go through transfer of the year, freshman of the year, all Big Ten, those kind of picks, and give some of our own preferences, and then also what we think the media and stuff like that will do. It'll be at 9 o'clock next Monday, Eastern time. Come join us for that, and if you're in the comment section, we'd love to hear your thoughts as well. So thank you everybody for joining us. Have a great night, and thank you guys for coming on the podcast. See ya.